Heard this talked about on the mainland is the 21st century classroom. I think there was something on 60 Minutes about it like a year or two ago. And I was wondering, I've never heard that here in Hawaii. Is that 21st century idea or concept something that we're striving to in Hawaii? Because I was looking at your little video there, and it kind of spoke to that. And the other thing is, everything that you guys have said, I want to ask the question, how can you, do you have the information to track a student's progress from the time they enter like kindergarten, say, or enter the school system in Hawaii, all the way up until the time that you are in the classroom with the child? I mean, do you have the ability to look at data so that you can make an assessment of the child's needs in your classroom, or is that being made at the, I mean, is that, I guess the way to say it is a teacher able to make that, have the information to make that assessment? Or is that assessment made at the school level with the principal or whatever? Or is that made at a state level or a board level or what have you?
I think that's a real school level thing. And for example, I also have to tell you this because you hear all the horror stories of No Child Left Behind, but until No Child Left Behind came in, I had no data sitting for kids in our classroom because they were tested in 5th grade and then they were tested in 8th grade. By the time the data came back, they were in high school, and when we took the 5th grade, because we're transient, we have military kids, the kids weren't there. And so we really had no data. So No Child Left Behind required states to provide data for schools through the testing program. So I can tell you that in our school, I have a team of teachers, it's a focus group on data, and all they do is crunch data and give it to the teams and the teachers. So we're looking at how are the boys doing compared to the girls? And how are our military kids doing compared to other kids? 3-4 years ago, we found, you know, and when I told this to the Joint Ventures Committee, I told them, you know, the white kids didn't make the benchmark for math. And they're like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Because the white kids are supposed to make the benchmark, right? But it was just that the white kids showed up because they had the numbers. Probably the Hispanic and the black kids weren't making it either, because when we talk to kids and you say, how many math teachers have you had in the last 3 years? Oh, I've had 5 teachers. And you're at a point in learning math where you're moving from arithmetic to more algebraic thinking, abstract thinking, and if you get it all broken up, kids are going to lose major concepts. And so we had to develop an intervention plan that took average kids who had missed school and just, you know, really give them an opportunity to fill in the gaps. And so data is really important, and data is also awesome to get money. Because when I can identify this is the problem and this is our plan to target it, I got guaranteed grants I can get. And we had hundreds of thousands of dollars of grants that allowed us to do things. So the data is there. What schools do with it is really up to the school. But I think a lot of schools are using data, and I think teachers are aware of what the kids are, where they're reading in the classroom. That was a long story, but I think you needed to hear that.
And then, I think it's a travesty that on a system-wide level, there isn't a systematic way of knowing where the kids are at the beginning of the year and at least at the end of the year, if not periodic. I think it's an indictment of our system as it exists right now. And it's my understanding, and a lot of times it's hard to figure out exactly why things are exactly as they are. It's my understanding that the teachers union has resisted this system-wide requirement to know where the kids are at the beginning of a period, the end of the period, in part because it's so easy then to look to see how that teacher in that classroom, whether those students were progressing above average, below average, or what have you, and that's very threatening to the teachers union. I talked about the governance structure. I don't think there's any question but what the teachers union has somehow managed to get a contract involving working conditions that, one, make it extremely difficult for a principal to remove somebody from the classroom that she knows is not working for those kids, is not getting the job done. Who cares what the reason is? If it's not working for those kids, the kids' needs should come first, and it doesn't, not by a mile. It can take years to move that teacher on out of that classroom, and that's just one example of how the union rules oftentimes put the adults ahead of the interests of the kids.
Real quick, I would agree that although I'm not a No Child Left Behind supporter, one of the few benefits has been the mandatory collection of data broken down by ethnic and income level. So that's, now at least we can track kids coming in from other schools, we have their scores. Being data driven is just a best practice. And one of the things that's important to me is as you increase competition or as you give control at the local level, then people will go to best practice because they need to stand out. They need to be able to tell parents, we know your child's succeeding and here's our proof. And so we're not going to get good data-driven practices from a top-down approach, right? The federal government is not going to mandate good top-down data-driven instruction. I think it's got to be from the bottom up, something we want to do, because you have to ask yourself the fundamental question as a community, what do you want to measure? You know, we've been taking these top-down standards when I would appeal to you that if you got your community together and said, what do we want a third grader to know? You'd come up with some pretty good things, right? I also want to comment on your 21st century learning comment, and I'm going to be a little bit adversarial and say that we as adults need to get out of the way of the kids. Because the stuff that we're teaching them and the way we're teaching them is not going to help them when they have to get a job, right? A lot of parents hate this device. This is the device your kids will have to be able to use to be functional in their adult life. We don't like Facebook. We don't like these online chat communities. That's the wave of the future. Major professional developments, Linksys is a good example. I forget the term right now, but where communities of folks, the future for business is where communities of learners come together and share knowledge to produce stuff. So this notion of kids chatting online and sharing information is how things will get done when they're adults. What do we tell them now? Don't share. Don't look at that person's paper. The exact opposite of what they'll need to know how to do to be successful. So, you know, if you notice, that video was very tech-driven. Showed the iPhones a lot, showed video cameras, showed computers, and that was the way to, and you see happy kids. Instead of arguing, there's a lot of schools that have banned these devices, right? The exact opposite of what I think we want to encourage kids to do is use the tools that work for them, and we should change, figure out how to use these tools to impact learning.